Hey y'all. Okay, it's time to pay the price. It's time for my dedicated review video of the Cosmetics Color Drops Serum Blushes, all 8 colors. We got the swatches, we got the overhead footage, we got the swatch comparisons, we got the application to my actual cheeks of all 8 of the colors, we got the questions, we got the answers, we got the opinions. If you have ever had any question in your mind about these blushes, anything from wondering if you should buy it to which color you should buy through to just idle curiosity about it, even with no interest in buying it, if you've ever even thought about it, or even if you haven't and you just like hanging out and, talking about color, then you've come to the right video. If this is your first time to my channel at all, welcome. I'm so glad that you clicked on this one. I'm Hannah. I love beautiful things, but I don't want to be someone who overspends on beautiful things. So I'm always kind of trying to walk that fine line between appreciation and some mediated indulgence in beauty and keeping an eye on my financial health. So if beauty content like that sounds good to you, I hope that you'll subscribe. Let's go ahead and get into the meat of this exciting video. So Cosmetics did send these blushes to me for the purposes of review. This video is not sponsored and they had no say in it at all, but I just wanted to put it right up front that these blushes were PR. You guys know that I receive things in the mail from time to time from brands for the purpose of review, but it never affects the way that I review them or feel about them. I'm usually just going through those things and ruthlessly giving most of them away and telling you why I'm not keeping them. So this is going to be in keeping with that behavior. And indeed, I'm not going to be keeping most of these 8 blushes. It was great to have them to be able to make this video, but I definitely don't need all 8. And I'll tell you at the end of this video which ones I'm planning to keep and why. The first thing I'm going to do is roll the good clear swatch footage that I have of the overhead swatches and of myself applying these blushes to my face, because I know that a lot of you are probably just here to see the colors like in good lighting and see them applied, and I want to make sure you get what you came for right up front. But before we get into that, I'm going to give you a brief overview, just like an abstract, if you will, of the video. A TLDR, but at the beginning. So basically, the formula is amazing. The packaging is atrocious. I feel like my recommendation based on those 2 things is that if you're interested in this and you have the budget for it, I would recommend just one. That's like kind of where I came out on it after trying all of them. And I am going to be going deeply into the colors and doing swatch comparisons with my other liquid blushes so that if you decide to get one, you will have a lot of information about which colors look like what in person, and then you'll be able to make the most informed decision. So that's just generally the shape of this video. I'm going to roll the swatch footage though now before we get into the rest of it. Okay, so the formula, point number one. The formula is amazing. It is so beautiful. It's so unique. I've never really seen anything like it. It basically, I mean, you probably could see, you can see it. I'm wearing it now. I'm wearing pink nectar. I decided to put pink nectar on today. And I will actually later in this video roll the extended footage of myself applying, talking through applying each color. The clips that you just saw would have been like really brief clips of me applying and of the way that each color looked on each cheek. But there's more footage, and I'm going to include this in the video later of me talking through the colors as I apply them, and you'll see me talking about pink nectar when I apply it. I think it's a pretty special color. But the formula, you can see that it's like you don't need highlighter, you don't need anything. I do usually put on some sort of slightly glowy primer, but you don't even really need, like, it's like the skin prep and the finishing product and the blush all rolled into one. It just creates the most beautiful, glassy, gleamy, healthy looking cheek and shiny. I feel like it has that shine of like you've been in the sun a little bit too long, but in a cute way. I mean, it's not cute to be in the sun for too long ever because it's bad for your skin, but you know what I mean, that kind of like flushed, healthy, sheeny look. I think that when the body responds to natural stimulants to make it flushed, whether it's like the sun or exercise or just general health and well-being, like you're drinking so much water that you're glowing from within, when the body produces its own beautiful flush on the face, it comes along not just with color, but with finish. Like there's sort of this sheen, this plumpness, like the cells of your skin are so plump that they're sheening over, and you kind of glow. You don't just flush, you kind of glow. And this formula imitates that more accurately than any makeup product that I have ever seen. I feel like no combination of like powder blush with powder highlight or sheen in a powder blush can even approach looking as much like the body's natural excitement on the face as these blushes look. And I've really fallen for it for that reason. I love the way that I end up looking. And I also really like the makeup looks that it kind of encourages me to build around it. So for example, today, I have a pretty strong brow. It's just, I dyed my brows and I used soap to sculpt them. I have fluffy eyelashes with mascara just on my top lashes, but no other eye makeup, no eyeliner, no eyeshadow, and just simple lip gloss and some spot concealer, and then a heavy application of pink nectar all the way across. The closest thing to the finish of these blushes that I've ever come across is the Physicians Formula Dewy Blush Elixir. The shade range is much smaller of that product, and I do find that it can sometimes be a little bit tricky with application. It can like start to set and then pill or patch when you're applying it. It's just a little bit more finicky. If you can get it to work, the finish is pretty similar. Like you get that same kind of dewy, glowy lip from within, no need for highlighter, glass skin type of thing. And it's great that that is available from a drugstore brand at a drugstore price, although I think that the Dewy Blush Elixir is pretty expensive still from Physicians Formula. It's less expensive than these blushes, but it's kind of a lot for a drugstore. But that's like the only thing that even approaches being any kind of formula dupe for this. But these have everything going for them over that. They apply more easily, they wear better. They don't set down completely, like they don't become dry on the cheeks, like they don't set completely and become dry, but they do kind of become one with the skin and set into the skin. And they get to a point where I feel like if a hair were to like get stuck and then like drag through it, it wouldn't disrupt the blush. So they don't stay as serum-y and liquidy as they are when you first apply them. So that is like the huge upside. That's the really amazing, dreamy thing about these. And then there is a huge downside, and that is the packaging. I was really hoping that everyone was exaggerating and that people were just being babies about it, because whenever these blushes are mentioned on social media, the comments are full of people saying like the packaging is atrocious. I mean, I've seen like really strongly worded comments. People are like, I love the formula, but I am never going to buy this again, or I'm not going to buy any extra colors until they fix the packaging, because it is just a travesty that they went forward with this packaging when it's so faulty. And I would read comments like that and I would be like, but isn't it like not that bad? Like it's not that bad, right? Like, you can make it work, right? So like, come on, it's cute. Like, you know why they did it. It's because it's so beautiful and cute, and there's something about this that's much more gratifying and fresher than like a squeeze tube, like the Glossier Cloud paints, which this could easily have been in that format, or even a dropper bottle with a little pincher thing at the top. The fact that these have this little button that you push down and then release, and the little eyedropper, that is part of what adds to their marketability, because it's like, it's just different, it's fun, they're so precious. You want to have them on your vanity. In terms of the way that the packaging looks and how covetable it is, they're great. I'm not, when I say that the packaging is the downside, I'm not talking about the aesthetic at all. The aesthetic is spot on. It's perfectly fine. It's the functionality. It looks like it should work a certain way, right? Like, so you unscrew it, and then your instinct is to push down on the button, release the button, and then pull this out, and you expect then that when you push down the button again, blush will deploy from the thing onto your hand. And it just doesn't work that way. Like, every time I open one, I open it, I push down the button, I take it out, and then I push the button down and nothing comes out. And you just have to mess around with it and try it in a bunch of different ways to get it to pick it up. But you don't know if it's picked it up until you try it, right? So the instructions on the website say, pull it out halfway, push the button down, push it in all the way, release the button, then pull it out, and then you should have gotten some blush. Yeah. And it does work, right? It's just not instinctive to do that. It's instinctive to unscrew it and then push it down and let it go and pull it out. And almost every single time I tried to use it, if I didn't focus on following the exact pattern, the exact procedure that they say on the website, like pull it out halfway, push the button, put it down all the way in, release the button, pull it out. If I didn't talk myself through that, I would do what comes naturally, which is to be like, push button, blah, 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 take it out, and nothing would come out. And it happened to me like 50 times because I did do a bunch of swatching, right? And when I was filming the overhead swatch footage for this video, I had all the blushes out, had them all unscrewed, and I was like trying to get swatches on my hand, and it was just like a bonanza of empty tubes of like me pushing it and nothing coming out. It just happened over and over again when I was trying to film the footage for this video. And like those little things, like a thing looking like it's supposed, like a button that you push and it looks like when you push it a thing will happen, but when you push it the thing doesn't happen, and you keep having to try it in different ways. Those little tiny frustrations, when they're present in packaging for a product that you're using, like say on a daily basis, the frustration can really build, and it can really, really take away from the experience of using the product. And I feel like in this case, unfortunately, the faultiness of that push button is frequent enough. It's like at enough of a level that it truly does detract from the experience of using the product. I actually feel like it's significant enough to be worth putting like pretty much right up front and center in this review, because it is real. The problem with the packaging is real. So knowing what I know now about the formula being the best ever and the packaging being like kind of the worst ever, knowing that if I were to like go back in time and make a recommendation to myself before I'd ever tried these about spending my own beauty budget on them. Like if I were to go back to myself and be like, hey, Hannah, I've got the tea. Let's talk about whether this product would be worth your beauty budget, given that it's got all of these really good qualities and then this really bad quality. The recommendation I would make to my past self would be to buy one. And I do think that even with the faulty packaging, because the quality, the serum-y quality and the look, those qualities are so good and so special, one of these blushes would be worth $25 of my own yearly beauty budget. And if I went back in time, I would tell myself, you will be perfectly happy that you did it if you spend $25 of your budget this month on one of these colors. But given the kind of frustration and faultiness, like I am already not a person who tends to want to buy multiple colors of a single product. Like I have to really, really, really love everything about the product to want to do that. And even then, sometimes I really love everything about a product and I still restrain myself to just the perfect color for me rather than trying to acquire like a complement of colors of that thing. But even if that were my proclivity and I kind of leaned towards buying multiple colors, I think if I went back in time and talked with myself, I would be like, look, in this case, just stick to one because it's worth it to have one color in this amazing formula, but the packaging is not perfect enough. It's not excellent across the board enough for it to be worth it being something that you kind of collect. And because it's such a natural skin-like look, I do feel like when you buy one of these blushes, you're buying something that you can use to build really natural looks that are glowy and like I was saying, slightly editorial, right? It's like you've got a little something about you, a little bit of a statement, but it feels like it's a flush from within. It feels like something that your skin is doing naturally. And because it's that kind of product, it kind of makes sense to just pick one, to pick the one that is like the one that is the color that your skin turns when you get flushed or you get a little bit of sun or something like that. So in a way, it's like the styling of the product, the finish of it, the look that it implies also guides me towards that recommendation of just picking one. So on that premise, let's deep dive into the colors. And I'll start by rolling the extended footage of myself applying each of these colors to my cheeks and talking you through that process. So stopping and talking about how each one looks with a light wash and then with a more intense wash. And you'll get a sense of which colors I kind of like the most and which ones I feel like suit me the most and which ones I feel like would suit other people better as I'm talking you through that. Okay, so we're starting with Rose Milk, which is one of the most neutral colors of the 8 and definitely the lightest color of all 8. I'm going to put that on this cheek. And then Venetian Rose, which I think is probably the most neutral, and it's definitely the one that has the most brown in it, but it's a bit deeper than Rose Milk. I'm going to put Venetian Rose on this cheek. I'm going to apply them to my cheeks directly just with the droppers, and then I'll use the Rephr 05 brush to blend them out. This Rephr 05 is a dupe for the Tom Ford blush brush, and I really love using both of these brushes for cream cheek and liquid cheek products. So there's a pretty subtle, this is like an everyday application of Rose Milk. Just looks like a hint of color and that serum-y sheen is really, really there. But I'm gonna build it up. I'm gonna build up all of these when I apply them so you can really see the color. So that's a bit stronger of a look, a little bit more flushed looking, but I feel like it still looks very natural and lit from within. It's such a pretty one. Okay, going into Venetian Rose. I feel like I applied a bit too much from the dropper, so I'm going to try to wipe some of it off and get some of it off the brush. All right, I think I saved it. So it's a little bit of a strong cheek, but I still feel like this could be an everyday look. And I think you can see the difference between the kind of light washiness of Rose Milk on my skin tone and the slightly more kind of blushy, flushed effect of Venetian Rose, though I consider them to be pretty similar in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to practical application. I will build up the color of Venetian Rose for a little bit more intense of a swatch. So you can see that it's capable of getting much darker and more intense than Rose Milk. For me, Venetian Rose, despite how kind of brown it looks in the bottle and how kind of berry toned I was worried it would end up going, it is really like the color that I turn when I burn. This is really like a fake sunburn on me, more than I think almost any blush, not almost, I think more than any blush I've ever come across. This is the most accurate kind of like faux sunburned, flushed, shiny out in the sun look for me. So I've really kind of fallen for Venetian Rose for that reason. Okay, let's take a look at these two brights. So this is Pink Nectar. I'm going to put Pink Nectar on this cheek, and then this is Peachy Peach, and I'm going to put it on this cheek. I feel like Pink Nectar gives me that kind of fevered look. Like this is the color that my skin turns when I'm running like a high fever and I'm just like super flushed, or if I really get like overheated. So I feel like Venetian Rose was like the sunburn color, and this is like the really overheated and flushed color, which can be beautiful and exciting in its own way. Yeah, it's definitely got something going for it. All right, let's look at Peachy Peach on the other cheek. Okay, there's Peachy Peach. I'm not the biggest fan of peach blushes or of orange blushes on me. I'm really kind of leaning away from that. As peach blushes go, I think that this is a really good one. I think that the color and the serum-y finish do work well together. I just prefer some of these slightly more dramatic and kind of gripping shades on my own skin. Okay, let's look at these two purple leaning shades. So we've got Soft Amethyst, which is kind of a grape. I'm going to put that on this cheek. And then we have Little Lilac, which is a really bright, soft lilac purple. I'm going to put that on this cheek. A little goes a long way with Soft Amethyst. It's definitely got that kind of like wind-whipped, flushed plum quality, kind of like a wintry, serum-y blush. That is how I would wear it, I think, for everyday application, especially on me. A little bit goes a long way, but I'm going to build it up a little so you can see the color. So there it is as like a real spot of flush on the cheeks. I do think that it's flattering, but it's not my favorite aesthetic look overall. So it's definitely not one of my favorite ones. It is a beautiful blush though. So there's a little bit of Little Lilac, just a hint of it. And you know, like all lilac blushes, it actually kind of comes out almost pink. Like when you buff it out, it kind of goes to that Barbie pink quality on the cheeks. This one it is really special. If you love this color of blush, I think that this is a good option. It's like a good format for it. And there it is built up. On me at this intensity, it's starting to have kind of like a 1980s blush draping look, and I'm not mad at that, but it isn't my personal favorite color for everyday wear. All right, and lastly, let's look at these really bright red toned blushes. So I'm going to put Sunset Sky on this cheek. It's the one that has a touch more orange in it. It's like a fire engine orangey red. And then I'm going to put Cherry Splash, which is a true cherry red, on this cheek. I've been wiping the brush off with a paper towel and sometimes a little bit of micellar water in between swatches, and that pretty much does the job to get it clean. It's still a little bit stained looking, but it's not depositing any of the color from one blush into the other. So there is a faint wash, just the faintest wash of Sunset Sky. That's still kind of a natural application, but a little bit more built up. There's something about this color, even though I love an orangey red, there's something about this color that I feel like doesn't quite suit my palette. It isn't the one that I end up kind of like excited to reach for. There it is, quite built up. And you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I think I thought that this was going to give me that flushed, fevered look, but in fact, it's Pink Nectar, the pink one, that gives me that look that looks more authentic. And on me, I feel like this one, when I build it up, it just starts to look kind of clownish. But I can imagine that Sunset Sky or maybe Cherry Splash, the next one, would provide that kind of flushed, fevered look for someone with different undertones or with a different depth of skin tone. And this one with just a little bit of a wash of color is already kind of starting to give me that clownish look. So I think that these bright red toned colors are probably more suited for someone just with a different complexion than mine. They are still really beautiful and the serum quality is really, really beautiful. I'm glad to know that they have these rich, kind of like deeply bright colors in the range. Okay, so now that you've seen me applying all of the colors to my cheeks, and again, I came back after swatching all of the colors on my cheeks and I wiped them all off. I wiped off, you know, the last two and I reapplied a little bit of concealer and then I applied a good strong application of Pink Nectar. So that's what you see on my cheeks right now. So now that you've seen that, let's look at all of the swatch comparisons between these blushes and all of the liquid blushes that have anything at all in common with these colors. So the first thing that I did was to swatch out all of my neutral liquid blushes on my arm to see if there were any of them that I thought might have anything in common with the more neutral blushes from the M Cosmetics range. So I swatched them all out on my arm, and you'll see me doing that. I will link below the blushes that I swatched for comparison, as well as linking the ones from M Cosmetics. So if there's one of these that you're curious about, you can check below and find out exactly what it is. And then I grabbed Venetian Rose and Rose Milk and Peachy Peach, and I swatched them next to my liquid blushes just to get a sense of which ones might be close matches and which ones I wanted to do bigger swatches of at closer range so you could see the differences and similarities even better. The first close-up comparison that I did was between Venetian Rose, which is definitely the shade that has the most brown in it, and CoverGirl's Clean Fresh Cream Blush in Butterflies. So you see Butterflies is there on the left, and it has its own sheen, but the sheen is a bit metallic. It comes from some shiny pigments that are mixed in rather than just from the serum-y finish, which is what the M Cosmetics blush has. It has a really sheeny serum-y finish, but it's not because of any reflective particles in the blush. It's just because of the serum quality of them. So you can see that they're both kind of gleaming. The colors are very similar. It's just Venetian Rose is a little bit more sheer, more buildable, and again, the way in which they're shiny and sheeny is different between those two blushes. The next comparison is between Rose Milk and Daniel Sandler's watercolor blush in the shade Luxe. So these color-wise are very, very similar. And when I first swatched them out, they also look pretty similar in terms of the finish. But the Daniel Sandler watercolor blushes do dry down to a pretty matte finish, and these ones from M Cosmetics don't. They retain that beautiful glass skin sheen. So these two, even though they look pretty similar, are actually really, really different in terms of the finish. However, the next comparison, which is between Rose Milk and the Physicians Formula Dewy Blush Elixir in the shade Gorgeous Peach, this is probably the closest match across the board. So color-wise, they're pretty similar, although you can see that Rose Milk, which is the one on the right, is a little bit lighter and a little bit less peach, but they're really similar color-wise. And then in terms of the finish, they are really incredibly similar. You can see from the swatch how similar they are. So then I did a 4 blush comparison with 4 neutral blushes, 2 from M Cosmetics, Rose Milk and Venetian Rose, and 2 from my blush collection, Glacier Dusk and the Flower Beauty Blush Balm in Pinched. I already knew that they weren't going to be very similar because when I swatched them out on my arm, I could see that Glacier Dusk doesn't really have a corollary in the M Cosmetics range in terms of color, and neither does Pinched from Flower Beauty. So I was just swatching them out to show you guys that Pinched is way lighter and kind of more yellow. Dusk is way more brown than any of these. Rose Milk is definitely more pink, and Venetian Rose definitely has more of a burgundy brown shade to it. So these are 4 very, very different colors, even though I tend to think of Glacier Dusk as kind of like my standard neutral liquid blush. It's really, really different from any of these, and Pinched is even more different from any of them. So then I went into the brights. I don't really have very many bright liquid blushes. The one that I do have that is like the brightest is the Cloud Paint in Dawn. And so I swatched it next to Sunset Sky, which is the red that has the most orange in it. But you can see that Dawn from Glacier, which is the one on the left, it's like a really rich yellowy orange. And Sunset Sky doesn't even come close to being that kind of yellowy orange. It just is like a soft, much more, compared to Dawn, a much more neutral leaning soft kind of flushy red. They really, really aren't very similar, and that surprised me. But then the last comparison, which also kind of surprised me, are 2 blushes that are incredibly similar. So I compared the CoverGirl Clean Fresh Cream Blush in Flushed, which is one of my favorites, one of my favorite liquid blushes. I compared that to Pink Nectar, and I found that they're pretty much the same color. The CoverGirl Clean Fresh Cream Blush, just like Butterflies, the color Flushed has a sheen that comes from metallic pigment, so the finish is pretty different, but the colors are almost exactly the same, and that was pretty interesting for me because I have been thinking of Flushed from CoverGirl, which I've really fallen in love with. I've been thinking of it as like a red, like a really coral red, but in fact it's more of like a soft corally pink. So I found out that I can get this kind of like feverish flushed look from certain kinds of pink blush. And I never really thought I could wear pink. I always thought that pink looked too makeup-y on me. But it does seem that certain pinks can help me to get a look that's more natural, like a look that is the look that I get under actual circumstances sometimes in my life with my actual skin. So that taught me something because I ended up really liking Pink Nectar. I would never have purchased this. At a glance, I would never have thought it would be one of the ones I wanted to keep. So that brings me to the final question of this review, which is which one would I recommend to myself? Like if I went back in time and I was having this conversation with myself, which color would I recommend? If I were only going to buy one, which one would I buy? Or if I were only going to keep one, which one would I keep? And then the extension of that question, which is that, you know, because I am a lucky duck and they sent these to me for review, I can keep as many as I want without putting myself out. So how many am I actually going to keep and which ones am I going to keep? So if I could only keep one, or if I were advising myself to buy just one, I would pick Venetian Rose. And I wasn't expecting this. Again, before I had my hands on these, before I tried them, when I was like looking on the website, because I was following their future career with great interest, the first 4 colors released, and there wasn't really one where I was like, oh, this would look like exactly what I love on me, like this is the one that I want. Rose Milk was the one that was the closest. And as you saw in my application, the footage of myself applying it, I do really like Rose Milk. And it is like the lightest and kind of like the easiest to wear in certain ways and the most neutral. So I do quite like it. But it was too pink for me to feel like I really wanted to buy it sight unseen before I had tried them on my cheeks and before I knew that like in this formula, actually some of the pinks are really beautiful. I was kind of waiting for more colors to come out. And then when they did, Venetian Rose, I just thought was like too berry toned for me. I thought that it was too strong of a blush. And so there were kind of none of them. None of the 8 colors really made my heart go pitter patter from a distance because I really like browns. I like Glossier Dusk. I like those kind of like really almost like chocolatey, like milk chocolate browns for blushes. And none of these look like that. And I don't think that I could tell from the advertising how much brown there really is in Venetian Rose. And then when I got them and I started playing with them, I was really, really satisfied by that color. I feel like it does have that beautiful neutral kind of like burnt undertone. And then the way that it actually blends out gives me that lovely faux sunburn look, which is also something that I really, really love. So Venetian Rose is like the tippy top for me. And if these all got taken away from me, I would happily spend $25 of my beauty budget to purchase it for myself. At this point, I'm planning to keep Venetian Rose, to keep Rose Milk for the time being, and to keep Pink Nectar. I think that Venetian Rose and Pink Nectar are the 2 that I have actually really fallen for. It's so surprising, but I just really, really love the effect of Pink Nectar. And then Rose Milk, if I don't end up using for it, if I don't end up reaching for it or using it very much, like I could see a scenario in which having all 3 of these sitting here, I think about them once in a while and reach for them every once in a while, but every time I want to wear them, I wear one of these 2 and then Rose Milk never gets used. And actually that kind of gets at the heart of why I don't usually buy multiple colors of the same formula, because frequently what will happen is I'll be like, oh, I want to wear that type of lip product or that type of blush, and then I'll end up reaching for the same one over and over again, and it'll just be the one that I love the most. So I'm going to keep all 3 of them for the time being, but I'm going to monitor my use of Rose Milk, and if I end up defaulting to these 2 favorites all the time, I'll give this one away too. So the other 5 I'm going to give away, and that's really wonderful. I love being able to gift things like this, and these make great gifts. They make great little gifts because the packaging, even though it's so difficult to use and, you know, inevitably you're on the struggle bus with it, it is very sweet to look at. And I do feel like makeup that has precious packaging like this is like the most giftable makeup. So that's it. That's my entire review of the Cosmetics Color Drops Serum Blushes. Formula, 10 out of 10. Packaging, 10 out of 10 for cuteness, 0 out of 10 for functionality. And then colors, you know, the 3 colors that I love, I really, really do love. I like them a lot more than I expected to based on the way that they look on the website. But I would love personally to see like a Glossier Dusk. I would really, really love to see a rich neutral brown, like a chocolatey brown in this formula. I would like to see more true neutral colors in general, but I always feel like that about blush ranges. And this range, it's wonderful that it goes to these like really rich, deep, punchy colors. I'm not saying that I don't want these to be there, because it's great that these are available colors. It's just that I personally like love those neutrals, and I love those browns. So I would like to see that. But I think that the color range, I've been critical of it, both in my just thoughts, like I myself, and also I think vocally. I think that in one of my Will I Buy It's, I was like, the formula looks great, but I don't like any of the colors. And now that I've had the chance to try it, I'm way less critical of the color range, because these 3 colors look way better on me than I expected them to. So I do give the formula, I give the color range actually a 10 out of 10 in terms of what they have on offer, just in general as a reviewer. As just one person, as me, Hannah Louise Poston, with my tastes, I would love to see them add a couple of more neutral colors, and I would especially like to see them add something akin to Glossier Dusk to the range. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that if you came here specifically for information about this product, that you got the information that you were looking for. And I hope more than anything that you are remembering to take extra good care of yourself right now, because that is what will make you the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.